at the end of the meeting. So I was going to allow about 10 minutes or so for connection problems. That's all, you know.
Okay.
So,
right, let's crack on then and see how fast we can get and cover our business. And then if we look like we're going to have a problem, then we may have to adjourn some of our business to another meeting.
okay.
So if I just hand over to Jeff and he can
Okay.
introduce the meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you for attending, ladies and gentlemen. Before we actually start with the formal agenda, I've got a couple of things I want to mention. I'd like to hold a 1-minute silence for our former colleague on this committee, Councillor Howard Barrett, who sadly passed away this week. So if we can observe that, please, for 1 minute. Thank you very much. The second thing, obviously, I'd like to welcome Michelle Edmonds to the committee. She's obviously Karen's replacement. Welcome. We're not a bad bunch, to be honest. I wouldn't say that to their faces. Welcome. And the final thing before we start is just, I think, from the committee, I'd like us to formally thank Karen Reddy for all her support over the years. You all happy with that? Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Okay, we formally start the meeting. Apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair. Michelle, do you want to do it? Because I think you've got a more formal record.
Okay, apologies for absence received, Chair, from Richard Searle, Community Council Representative, and Councillor Gareth Richards.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 2 is obviously the declarations of interest. Has anybody got any declarations in this meeting? No? Okay, thank you very much. Moving swiftly on to item 3, which Caris will run us through, please. The Public Services Ombudsman for Wales Annual Report.
Thank you, Chair. This is something you can see from the summary in the report that you first decided back in 2015 that you would have a report to one of your meetings each year, providing you with the annual report from the Ombudsman. What we've discussed in previous meetings is that it's not necessarily helpful just to have the report because it's more helpful, as it is on some of the other issues that we deal with, the complaints and whistleblowing, to have comparative data, because then you can see where we are and whether things are improving, getting worse, whether there's a problem that you need to start focusing on. So even though we haven't had the Ombudsman's annual report for this year, what I have done is produce a report where we've drawn together a bit of analysis and a bit of data that covers the last few years and then gives you some comparison with some neighbouring authorities that are of a similar sort of size to us. And I'm not proposing to go through this in enormous detail because I don't know that there's a great deal we can say from it at the moment. What you can see is, firstly, that in comparison with neighbouring authorities of a similar size, we certainly aren't doing any worse. And then also what you can see is that set against anticipated levels of complaints, again, we're not doing too badly. Now, I'm not saying that with any view to saying everything's fantastic, because the ideal would be no complaints and nobody having any difficulties that they felt the Ombudsman needed to be involved with. The nature of public service is such that it would be highly unlikely that you would reach that situation, because in serving the public, almost inevitably there will be people who wish that they could have more of a service, or that people could do more for them, and they may not always be entirely reasonable in wishing that. But certainly the purpose of this report is that it enables you to have some context to just the data that comes from the Ombudsman when he provides his annual report. So I'm providing this to you today, and then what we will do is when the Ombudsman's annual report that covers this year is produced, we'll bring that again, and then you'll have the opportunity to have a look at it and see whether there's anything you want to draw from it or any matters that you want to pursue.
Do we know if that's available for the next meeting, possibly, Caris?
I'm a little bit in the dark about when it's going to be available, because like everybody else, as a result of the pandemic, the Ombudsman's timescales have been sort of knocked completely out of sync. So what I'll try and do is find out whether it's likely to be available for the next meeting. And if it is, we'll agenda it and we'll provide an updating report. If it's not, we'll deal with one of our other fixed items at the next next meeting, and then we'll push the Ombudsman's report on so that we can have a meeting where it's agended and we can do this sort of comparative process just as we've done here.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments? No, Martin?
So yes, I was rushing to either click away with my arm, so I did both in the end. I guess, Caris, the devil's in the detail with all this stuff. Whilst the numbers are helpful to understand we're in the ballpark of neighbouring authorities, it's all about the seriousness, significance of them, and actually, frankly, from our position is what happened, and was there a sort of learning curve? Did we, the so what kind of question that came out of these, make sure they don't happen again, isn't it?
Yeah, and that is very much what the Ombudsman's report itself does for you, because the Ombudsman analyses the data around the raw figures. So in the Ombudsman's report, you'll get the figures, but then you'll also get some analysis where it says these things have happened, this is a trend, this is one of the things I'm most worried about, this is one of the things I'm pleased about. So all of that comes to you in the Ombudsman's report. The purpose of this is to give you a bit of a different context so that you'll get that information from the Ombudsman's report, but then you'll also be able to do a bit of comparison and say, this is up on last year, down on last year, whatever. I'm just hoping that we can sort of broaden it rather than just looking at the Ombudsman's report and saying, there we are, he says this or he doesn't say this. We can then put it into a bit of context.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. The one thing he has said, I don't know what report it was in, was there's an election looming and complaints necessarily go up at that area at that time of year. And,
yes.
and so, to paraphrase him entirely, he says sort of we need to have a bit of a thicker skin and don't refer every those things to the Ombudsman, deal with them yourselves.
So if you just look at the figures you've got here, the 2016-2017 at 3.2, by way of context, complaints were up by 3% on the previous year. That was the last council election year, and that's what happened. It does happen. It certainly happened here. It's happened in virtually every authority. Is that everybody complains about each other during the run up to an election. And no matter what we do to try and keep a lid on it, that is what happens. So we will anticipate it won't come in this year's figures. So the next report we get will cover this year. But as we get to May, which would be covered in his next report, we will probably have an increase in figures. I will keep you informed about that, because if we have a meeting in sort of January time, which is going to be about right for us, the next one after that, we'll need to work out whether we want to have it just before or just after the election. And at that point, we'll probably be able to feed back a little bit about whether we got inundated with complaints on the way into the election.
But hopefully the training we did a few weeks ago will head off some of that stuff, won't it?
Julian.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question for Caris, really, just out of interest. Out of these referrals or complaints you get around election time, are any of them ever found to be well grounded, or are they all of them spurious and groundless?
No, they are not all spurious. So the complaints processes that we have, when it comes to election time, the complaints that we have are about elected members or prospective elected members, realistically. When it's elected members, there are three real options. So a complaint could come to me as the monitoring officer to decide, and I have to think about how I deal with it. It could come to the informal resolution process, which either means that I try and negotiate some sort of agreed outcome, or else it comes to you as a standards committee and you decide it, or else it goes to the Ombudsman. What tends to happen in the lead up to election is that whilst some of the complaints may be well founded, they tend to be low level. They tend to be squabbling, frankly, and a lot of the time we can sort that out by informal resolution. When they do either go straight to the Ombudsman, if they are that sort of low-level squabbling, the Ombudsman will either say, I'm not going to investigate, or he will refer it back for informal resolution. So it's all a bit circular. If they're low-level complaints, they may well be things that have been done and that do amount to a breach of some level, but normally we can resolve them by negotiation. Very rarely, I'm just trying to think of anything around an election. Very rarely here, I can't think of an instance in Merthyr where something has been a serious breach of the code that has gone to the Ombudsman around elections.
No, I agree there. I mean, we've been in for, say, 6 years, I think, and nothing has come back towards this committee.
No. Thank you, Caris, for that. The other question I was going to ask was, in the report you've done there and the figures you've given, could you not have, and I don't want any sort of specific detail, but put into there the categories, for example, within those complaints you've given, the number who were involved an elected member, one was social services, one was education, and so on, so that really it would be useful. Obviously, if it is elected members, you don't put names on them, and you don't name any individuals within the departments, but it might be useful to have a little bit of colour to see what is making up the bulk of the complaints. It might be interesting, unless, of course, from what your last answer was that may well be within the Ombudsman's report.
Yeah,
it is fair enough.
Yeah, so what you will find in the Ombudsman's report is that level of detail. So the Ombudsman reports the sort of issues that he's had to deal with. I think probably the best way to do it is to leave it that we look at the Ombudsman's report that he issues next. We'll compare it with this data that's here. And if then you think there is something that would be more helpful, we'll talk about it then, and we'll decide what we want to include in this report the next time you get this report. Okay.
Yeah, well, thank you, Caris. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Okay, if everyone's happy, we'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, the recruitment of independent members.
Yes, so I think probably, Chair, we just need formally to deal with the recommendations in the previous one.
Okay, sorry.
Normally, because I'm doing oral reporting, we haven't really done that. So there are two recommendations, and the one is that the committee notes and debates the information contained within the report,
Sure.
which we've done, and the second is that an information report be scheduled to a future standards and council meeting to report on the Ombudsman's annual letter. So I think probably if we could just have a show of hands, Chair, as to whether everybody's satisfied with that.
Everyone
Yeah, and just do it physically, that's fine, rather than you don't have to do it
Yeah.
in tech.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Anonymous, yeah. Thank you.
So,
Sorry.
Chair,
Right, okay.
yes.
And bear in mind, if that report from the Ombudsman doesn't come in to the next meeting, it'll be presented in front of a new committee virtually.
Yes.
Okay, which takes us on nicely to item 4.
Takes us into our next item. Yes, thank you, Chair. So we do have 3 of our members who will have to leave us. So Jeff and Ian and David will need to be leaving us. So their next meeting will be their last meeting. Again, we're in the business of some of these timescales are a little bit flexible because of the whole pandemic thing and not enforcing the terms of office in the way, in that sort of strict way. But what we're going to say is that the next meeting will be your last meeting. So what I'm going to ask you to do today is agree that I can issue an advert to recruit some new lay members to this committee. We had a recruitment process in 2019, so I intend to just repeat that recruitment process. We had an advert at that point, so I'll use that same advert. We'll put it in the Local Authority Contact magazine and on our website, and then what I was discussing with the chair was that if we have a period of 4 weeks for people to apply, should it look as though we're not getting a full response or not enough people because we've got 3 that we need to appoint, I'll have a chat with the chair and we'll consider whether we just extend the time period or whether we need to consider any other sort of action. If we do get a full response, then we can start to hold some interviews, and I think the chair has kindly said that he would be able to be involved in some interviews, and we'll start getting people in place ready for when our current members need to stand down and we need those replacements to be available. So I would just be grateful, certainly I'll deal with any questions, and then grateful if anybody could tell us if they're happy with that way forward.
Martin.
Can I just check, Karis? I'd be interested to know from previous sort of exercises how many people actually apply, because with all due respect, I'm not sure how many people read in depth the in-house magazine and how many people visit the website and look on jobs, because this isn't a job in the traditional sense of a job. I know from personal experience, finding out is actually very hard. I think I found out this job, this committee 1 day before the closing date or something like that. So I just wonder about how we generate the best field.
Well, what our experience has told us is that there is a cohort of people who have a real interest in serving on this kind of committee. So when we appointed, at the time that we appointed Jeff and Ian and David, we had an enormous response. So we had advertised in this way, but I think we had over 20 people, and we then whittled that down to a short list, but we still had, we had choices to make. There were a number of people who had applied. Definitely fewer the last time, but still we had people to interview and we had a choice. It wasn't just, one person and we'll appoint that one person. So what we have found in the past is that for this particular committee, we do normally get quite a good response. There are other committees where you don't, and it's a lot of extra effort and a lot of trawling and trying to think about better ways to publicise it and to see if we can get people involved. But there definitely are people who are interested in this. And given the position in national politics at the moment, I anticipate that there will be even more people who would be interested in this because it's definitely a hot topic at the moment. So I think if we go down that route, if we go through the Contact magazine and we put it on our intranet site, obviously if it's not producing a response, then we'll need to rethink. But if it does produce a response, I'll be able to let you all know and we'll try and press on.
Thank you, guys. Any other questions? Okay, are we all happy that that is put forward as an advert on the local magazine and the website? Yes?
Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
thank you very much. Thank you, Caris. The only other thing I'd comment on that is if you know people who are suitable, obviously, for as candidates for this committee, please mention it, and more than happy for them to apply, obviously. Okay.
A friend of mine is currently sitting on the House of Commons Standards Committee, and I suspect for not much longer, so he might be interested.
Good.
Yeah. Anybody who's interested, we'll have them.
Totally. The more the merrier, really. Okay, thank you. We're coming on now to item 5, which is training.
Yes, so I don't really have much of an update on this because, as with so many other things during pandemic, this has sort of ground to a halt. So I think the only thing I'm going to say about it is that we, from the new year, I will start trying to put out some feelers to see if I can find what everybody else is doing and see whether there's any options for some joint training or some exchanges, as we've done in the past with RCT, and see if we can start getting that moving again, because I know it was something that you all enjoyed when we've done it before. I have no idea whether the conference that we used to have as an annual thing will be reinstated. That was always something that I know was helpful for everybody, particularly in terms of making connections and sharing experience. But as all of those things have been non-existent for the last year and a half, I'm just going to wait till the new year, and then we'll have another look and see whether there are any opportunities for us to link in with somebody and get some training going. Okay,
thank you very much. Any other comments? No, I can recommend the annual conference. The one in Cardiff was excellent. Yeah. One in North Wales, unfortunately, wasn't brilliant because of the sound system up there. So, to be honest, and there was quite a bit of politics involved as well, as far as I was concerned. Anyway, thank you, Caris. Moving slightly on, and really, it's only item 6, which is the date of the next meeting.
Yes,
which is January.
I think January. So I don't know, Chair, if you want to suggest something, and then we'll see how we can fit in. I think Fridays still work, Friday afternoons, unless anybody finds this a difficult day. I think it's probably just about easiest to stick to the same day as we have been.
Sure. Well, I mean, the dates, unless, the 7th is a little bit early in January, obviously. 14th, 21st, 28th, any preferences? They're all free in my diary at the moment.
I can't do the 28th.
No good. Can't do the 28th.
14th or 21st? Are we all okay for that?
Shall I suggest the 21st?
Right.
Yeah.
21st, okay.
Says no, let us know now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fine.
That's fine, yes. Same time, Caris?
Yes, please. I think that works, doesn't it?
Totally. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. That's the 21st of January, a Friday. Sorry. Yeah, Friday. That's it, really. I don't have any item that's urgent. So thank you for your attendance. May I be the first to wish you compliments of the season.
No.
I'll see you in the new year for our last meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
so
you.
much. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.